This whole video is about using what you've got, and that includes this old poster board I've had kicking around for over a decade. That's right, we're not spending a penny today, and we're going to make the base for a giant diorama I'm calling New Orc City. We're going to make a kill team board, and we're also going to make a painting we can hang on the wall. And that starts with newspaper. This poster board is made out of MDF, so the front of it is really flat. And the vibe I try and go with all of my paintings is like a wheat paste look. So I like to have texture and creases and those sort of weird little bits on the actual canvas. Newspaper and glue do that perfectly. Next up is gesso. This will help get rid of that newspaper look, which we kind of don't want. I'm quite happy for some of it to come through, but I want to knock that back and unify the canvas and get it ready for painting. While that's drying, let's turn our attention to the actual image that we want to paint.
Whatever the fuck.
I'm pretty sure most of you can recognise this, but here's my version. It's a bit simpler, but it has more of a street art kind of feel to it, which is exactly what I want, and it's perfect for going on the underside of a diorama called New Orc City. There's a few things I need to do to it to get it ready for the canvas, but I won't bore you with the details. Essentially, it's just resizing and draining all of the colour out. Now that's done, I can drag it into MS Paint, where I can print the whole thing out at full size. Some cutting and sticking later and it fits like a glove. Now I can turn my attention to the gaming board. I filled the inside of the poster board up with some XPS film offcuts. It's about 3 centimeters deep, and I already have a rough idea of what I want to do with it. I've just got to get this tree in place, and then I can simply start hacking away. It was at this point when I realised all the work that I'd done on the other side of this board was utterly pointless because this happened.
Welcome to 52 Miniatures. My name is Alex. Have a look at this. I'm so excited. How cool is this? Yeah? I'd like to tell you what this is and how you can get a hold of it.
Well, you, Alex. You to the moon. In all seriousness, Alex is one of my favourite YouTubers. I'll leave a link in the description. Some of the stuff that he builds is epic, and the fact that he actually commissioned an artist to make him this poster is just mint. I think it's great. It's great for him, it's great for the community, it's great for the artist. But the very moment I saw it, I knew what I was going to do with it. And I'm sorry, Alex, I'm going to paint all over it. You're giving it away for free, and it's perfect for the aesthetic of the painting that I'm aiming for. And also knowing there's a little bit of 52 miniatures in this project, honestly, I find quite exciting. We'll come back to me in this project in a bit. First, I just want to let Alex tell you where you can get your own copy of this.
The Evolution poster can be found on my website in the shop as a free download. I'd love to see this in hobby stores and gaming clubs. Regardless of the propaganda intent, it's just a really cool poster. So please, just go download it for free. And if you feel like sharing, just, take a picture of how you use it and share it on social media, hashtagging Evolution. Also, please credit the artist, Juan Gomez Cabello, when possible.
Cool.
This board is so old you can see the MDF in the frame was actually warped. Just going to fix that up with a little bit of filler or spackle if you're from a foreign land, just to make sure that the board looks like it fits the frame. After that dried, I gave the board a coat of watered down primer because I still want the image to come through. And after that, I actually covered the whole board in matte medium. I knew this next part was going to be tedious, so I made sure to grab myself a beer, and the next step was headphones and a little bit of BBC Sounds ambient focus. It was time to transfer my image onto this board. First things first is to mark out where I want the image to go, and this is where the matte medium comes in, because it allows me to use graphite to transfer the image from the paper to the board. And that's where this stuff comes in. As you've probably already guessed, this is graphite transfer paper. I'm going to use this to cover the space where I know that the image is going to go, and this magic stuff is going to do some magic. Once it's all taped down and secure, we've got to fetch ourselves that big old sheet of paper with the original drawing on it. Then it's time for tracing. And tracing. And tracing. And tracing. And tracing. And tracing. And tracing. Until I've been told I don't ask this enough. So if you are enjoying this video, these ramblings of a madman, please hit that like button, click share, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss anything in the future. But more importantly, please go to Alex's channel and MS Paints and do exactly the same thing, because they produce some really high quality content. Enough pandering to your degenerate audience, you foolish old man. Get on with it. I have missed a bit, but that's an easy fix. And although you can't see it very clearly, this has transferred perfectly to make the painting part of this really simple. Oh, I forgot to show you. Look at these custom bad boys. Anyway, it's time to get back to the board. My weapon of choice for the next stage of this painting are markers. Specifically, Posca markers. They're a water-based paint marker, but they're going to make this part so easy. Just need to grab myself a piece of paper. What I'm going to do is use this as a guide to where all the black is supposed to be on the painting. Dead easy, right? A shake and a tap later, the pen's ready to go and we can just start drawing. There's definitely a recurring pattern here, and that's patience. After the paint had dried, it was time for some matte varnish. This is exactly the same technique as we use when we're painting minis. This just creates a save point. Now we can turn our attention back to the gaming board, and it's time for sculpt to mould. My plan is to use some of the cuts and the scrapes in the foam as actual rock forms. Everywhere else I need to blend it all in. Sculpt to mould does that perfectly. This is actually a DIY version. There's already a video on the channel. Go check it out. Dead easy to make. It is worth noting though that I actually mix it in small batches. This allows me to control drying times much better and actually leads to a lot less wastage. I then needed to seal the foam, so I broke out what was left of my Mod Podge. For some ungodly reason it turned out it was blue, added a little bit of water to it, and then I slapped it all over the board so that I could then take the board outside, hit it with a couple of rattle cans. Now it's primed and toned in a nice rock colour, ready for painting. And that starts with an oil wash. I know that seems a little bit backward, but my base colour for my rock foundation is already down, it's already on the board. So applying this now means it will seep into the recesses, and I'm just going to paint highlights on the rocks on top of that, and then soil. I want to bring these rock forms more in line with the scenery that surrounds me in the area I live in Scotland. And to do that, I'm using a titanium white, a black, and dioxine purple. And then on all the areas where I want rock forms to be, I'm going to give them all a heavy dry brush or overbrush to give them some life and some colour and a little bit of highlight. And then, in the spirit of using what we've got kicking about, I've got these 3 browns, and I'm going to use them to create an irregular pattern wherever I want earth. And it can be completely irregular, this is just a base covering. Next I'm going back in with a dry brush. This is to try and help give a little bit more life to the look of the soil. I want some of it to look like it's drying out. I'm going to follow that up by using a brown oil wash, just to again darken the recesses. But I was scuppered by my own cretinism. Once my idiocy had been resolved, I proceeded just to slap this stuff everywhere where there was brown. I let it dry overnight, trying to keep the board as flat as possible, and this is what I came back to. From this angle it's looking pretty good, but from the overhead shot it's looking even better, but now it needs some texture. I'm a moderately keen gardener, and I use a lot of horticultural sand for growing root veg, and I have a feeling I'm going to need some IPA for this. I took some of the sand and baked it in my oven at 150 degrees Celsius for about 20 minutes. After letting it cool, I chucked it through a sieve, ended up with this fine sand and this coarser stuff that I can use as rocks. I've tried recording this bit 4 times, but it keeps failing because I can't get the words out. Just like nothing came out of this damn spray bottle. It was crap, so I had to find another way of doing it. I slowly but surely covered the board in both the finer and the coarser sand. Then using a squeezy sauce bottle, I made sure all the bigger rocks had enough PVA covering them. Fortunately, I had plenty of IPA already in what we could call here a scoosh, which I use for cleaning when I'm doing 3D printing, and used that to break the tension of the PVA so that I don't just get lumps of glue on the board. That was followed up with a more diluted PVA, but IPA actually inside the mix this time. Then it was left to dry. And the next day, it looked like this. And it's absolutely rock solid. Time for some more painting. These are the craft paints I use most often, and this box is spares plus some artist paint. And I'm going to start with this golden fluid acrylic red. Paint, a little bit of water, and it's time for what they call in the comic book industry, flatting. All that means is I'm just going to lay down all the base colours. The plan is to use 3 of every colour, so 3 reds, 3 greys, 3 metallics, And as an example, the red that I'm using at the moment, I'm just going to mix a darker version and a lighter version and use those as my 3 base colours. But the skin is a bit more complicated. I felt the greens needed a bit more life to them, so I'm lucky enough that I do have quite a selection of green. So I thought I'd take some time, do some little test swatches and try and figure out exactly which of my greens that I'm going to use and combine to make the skin tones. After settling on the 3 greens that I decided to use, I roughly laid those colours down and it was time to add some of the darker tones. And then, just like we did before, use some matte varnish to create a save point. The face really needs to be the highlight of this painting, so the mass of green behind the face needs to be knocked back somehow. Some ripping, sticking, cutting and peeling later, and I had a solution. I used the purple to solve this problem because we'd already used purple in the lip, so it made sense to keep the same colour palette. Once that had dried, I painted the lightest greens, which are now purple, with the darkest green. This was to make sure that the mass behind the face still looked like it was part of the orc. After I painted in the greys, which were just variations of black and white, with a tiny little touch of blue, it was time to tackle the metallics. The darker silver you can see is Vallejo's gunmetal grey. The lighter silver from a Posca pen. I want to use the Posca pen as the lightest silver, but of course, as I said earlier, I want 3 of each colour. So we're going to return to the airbrush, this time using the same gunmetal grey. Now it'll have no effect on the original gunmetal grey on the canvas, but it will darken down the lighter Posca pen silver, which will mean I can go back in with the Posca pen and you'll clearly see a difference. Tearing the stencil away should be anybody's favourite part of this process, and I've still got to do it again. But before we get to that last stencil, I'm going to add in some of the lighter Posca colour marker back in, and you can clearly see using that airbrush just to darken the first layer has worked really well. This time I've covered the entire orc and I'm spraying the background with a brown wash just to make it nice and dirty. The ice cream man has come. My dog hates the ice cream man, and the only thing that calms him down is if I howl with him. I'm not done with the stencil yet, and I've got some pouring medium. You can use what I believe is called Floetrol. Decorators use it as a paint extender, so it dilutes the paint, but it doesn't dilute the colour. What that means for me is I can lower the viscosity of the paint, so I'm mixing up some batches of the same reds that we've used on the painting already, and then with a pipette, not a pipette, because that's not how syllables work, I just keep layering the 3 red paints until I'm happy. There's one last big job to do. But I know this video has been a little bit longer than normal, so if you have made it this far into the video, I want you to know that right now, there is no one in the world that appreciates you more than I do. I've never done this with foam before. It was a complete pain in the arse until I figured out a great way of drying the sponge quickly. This process is so much easier with sawdust, but looks so much better with foam. This last bit of flock is a mix between some of the fine foam flock that we made and some of the bog standard nylon flock that I had left over from other projects. With a few details to sort out on this side of the board, and once I added the blacks back into the painting, our orc looked like this. It turned out pretty good. I'll be happy to hang this on my wall, and it's even got its own 3D printed Wulvenkraft shield on it. And I'm really pleased with the other side. This is actually the first gaming board I've fully completed, and it was all done with leftovers from other projects. Now I'm really looking forward to getting some models on this board. Thankfully, it's really easy.